Lesson 2, Operations of Arithmetic. So when we are doing arithmetic, there's different operations that we do. One is like adding, subtracting, multiplying, dividing. Adding and subtracting are called opposites. So if we just put a plus sign, opposite, the word opposite, and then a minus sign. That just reminds us that adding and subtracting are opposites. Multiplying is opposite to dividing. And we have in math these things called fact families. I know that you guys have heard of these before, so I'm hoping that this is a review. A fact family is where you take three numbers and you use opposites. Let me show you an example. For instance, 5 plus 9 equals 14. And then you can switch the order of the adding. 9 plus 5 equals 14. And then if you put the 14 as the minuend, you can do 14 minus 9 equals 5, and 14 minus 5 equals 9. So we were able to show that adding and subtracting are opposites. With multiplying, we could do 5 times 10 equals 50, or 10 times 5 equals 50, or we could take the product and do 50 divided by one of the factors, 10 equals 5, or 50 divided by 5 equals 10. So these are called fact families. We have different symbols for multiplication and division. If we want to write 6 times 4, we can use the word times. We can use a big time sign, like an X. The more we do algebra, the more we get away from the X, because that's a variable that we'll use when we do algebra. You can use a dot to show times, 6 times 4. You can just put them in parentheses. You could put both in parentheses, or you could just put one in parentheses. Either way, that means multiply. So if a number is right next to a set of parentheses, that's going to tell you need to multiply. And when you're using variables, if you have just letters, so variables usually are letters, this would be an example that I would take A and times it by B, which we'll see more of that as we go. For divided by, say we had 8 divided by 2. We can use the words divided by. We can use a fraction, 8 divided by 2. So when you see a fraction, you read the numerator first and then say divided by and then the denominator. We can use the divided by symbol, or we can use the box that we divide. Now, here's the hardest part, is to go from this to this, where 8 is the dividend and 2 is the divisor. Kids get really confused because here the 8 came first, here the 8 came second. So we have to make sure that when we say 8 divided by 2, our 2 is by the box. 8 divided by 2, that means 2 is by the box. That's kind of how I remember it. So we're going to write the definition for variables. That's just letters that we use to represent a number. The pound sign here just means number. And it could be any number. Sometimes we're solving to find out what number it is. And here's an example where we might solve. 7 plus x equals 11. You guys could do this in your head. X is just how many more you need to get from 7 to 11. In algebra, what we do is we do the opposite. This is adding 7 to x, so we're going to subtract 7 from both sides of these equal signs. So we're going to have x equals 11 minus 7, or 4. If we were multiplying 8 times a number y equals 48, you're going to have to divide by 8 to find out what y is. So we can divide both sides by 8. If you notice, 8 divided by 8 is just 1. And 1 times y is y. So we have y equals 48 divided by 8, which becomes 6. Sometimes you're asked to justify each step. I'm going to show you what that looks like. So if the directions say justify each step, you're going to start with the problem that you are given. 25 times 15 in parentheses times 4, and then you write given, because that's what's given. We're going to use some properties here. And I will tell you what page the properties are on in a minute, right after we're done with this. So we have, we're going to just switch the order 15 and 25 here. So we're going to keep in parentheses 15 times 25, and then put times 4 on the outside. When you switch the order, that's called the commutative property of multiplication. Commutative. We just commuted their place in the problem. Now we're going to pick up the parentheses. We're going to leave everything in the same order, 15 times, and then we're going to move our parentheses, 25 times 4. Whenever you move the parentheses like that, that's called the associative property. Have you guys seen ditto marks before? No. Okay, these little ditto marks right here, they're just little quotation marks. That means, only word I can think of is ditto. That means repeat. Repeat what's right above it. So instead of rewriting all these things, I just put ditto marks. And that saves us some lead out of our pencils. Okay. Yes, it's very important to save all your lead. Okay. Just kidding. Okay, so we have 15 times, 25 times 4 is 100. So all we did was we multiplied 25 and 4. So we just write that. Multiply. And then our last step, we have 1,500 or 1,500. We could do ditto marks. That was our justification. We multiply. You can find all these properties on page 14 in your book. We also have a paper that you have on your desk that we are going to glue into your book. And I will tell you how to do that after the lesson's over. There are, just real quick, I'm going to go over negative tricks when you are trying to add with negative numbers. I don't think it's so much a trick as just the way to do it, but we can call it a trick. Negative tricks. So if we're subtracting a bigger number from a smaller number, we're going to go into the negatives. So 100 is only 100 units away from 0. So if you take away 100, you're at 0. Then you still have to take away another 265. So if you wanted to, you can just rewrite it with the bigger number as the minuend. 365 minus 100 equals 265. But the answer will be negative. Let me write this right here. Answer is negative. So the answer to our problem will be negative 265. Sorry, I was running out of room, so I kind of went up instead of down. That's the end of the lesson.